building your processes, building your SOPs along with your product market fit, because you'll never be able to sort of catch that up. And I think that's goes to speak about the DNA of the company, right? I think it's finally what's the culture, what's the DNA, right? So what's your view on that in terms of, because you've seen it all, you've seen all these journeys as well, right? So, Sahil, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think I will just double click on what you said there. I think it is something which you have to kind of preempt,
Right.
because I think as a while it's a DNA for for Hunasa, and I think it's great what they've built out there. But I think a lot of younger organizations, and in fact forget younger, a lot of traditional organizations as well, I think are still grappling, and they if you ask them about their GTM and they know exactly. And
Right.
somehow in the entire Gantt chart, there is no provision and there is no conversation on, how do we make this more efficient and how do we make this faster, right? There is conversation on, doing X amount of business and Y amount of growth. But no one talks about something as basic as, and they'll also talk about forecasting. We'll also talk about our working capital, but we will
Right.
not talk about does our warehouse have the capacity. I think
Correct.
that, we will cross that hurdle when it comes.
True.
And I think that is something which is a big unlock. And the
Mm.
brands and the companies who are able to kind of do that and preempt that to happen, I think are able to, I think, save and not just save. I think it's a lot more efficient way. It's being penny wise, pound foolish. I can talk about Swiss Beauty. We were doing a certain unlocks, and we knew that we are going to chase
Mm-hmm.
a certain revenue ambition. And being 100% bootstrapped company, I think the first place where you're putting marketing dollars wouldn't be supply chain per se. You will say, okay, let me get the product, and we are largely imported, so we want to make sure we have enough working capital. Do we have the right teams? But if I now look in the hindsight, 2 years ago, we were operating out of our own warehouse. And I think that's when, Ajay, you remember, we spoke, and I said, I think this is going to be a problem because I go 2x and I know my warehouse cannot go 2x, right? And I can't go 2x on my people. So I think it's very, very imperative for us to understand that that is an equally big unlock than getting a brand ambassador and then getting in, putting all your performance, marketing monies in place. And Avinash is going to smile on that because that unlock, when it in the popular word photos, then it is all goes out to supply chain and say, "Matlab, mera lead time ho gaya, mera ye ho
Right.
gaya." They're like, "You never told us, that you are expecting this." So I think that balance and that synergy is extremely critical in the business.
Exactly, because what happens that once it breaks, right, then your customer experience sort of falters, right, and then sort of getting the business back to that level and building that trust back is always, always a big challenge. So one thing I want to touch upon a little bit is about trends, right? I mean, so at Emiza, we've sort of now, been in this whole D2C thing for about 5 years now, and we've sort of seen, the whole euphoria around D2C. We've seen also sort of then some of the negative emotions around D2C, right, over this last 5, 6 year period. So I think what I want to touch upon a little bit is about some of the trends, right? What are some of the mega trends, especially around beauty and personal care, that we're seeing both in the offline world and in the online world, which some of our viewers would want to latch on to, and what are some of the emerging opportunities and threats that you see sort of in this space going forward?
Oh, Sahil, you're going?
No, no, go ahead. You first always. I'll, I'll, I will pitch in.
Sure. So, so I'll break it into two parts, right? The first one is within the beauty and personal care, right? And while you did mention, what's happened, how would things evolve in the offline and the online? I think before that, the first thing is how do we see some of these things changing in terms of how a consumer makes that purchase, right? Where would a consumer go and purchase? And that's an area that we have seen in the last couple of years has shifted significantly, right? While we know that e-commerce as a channel has grown. Traditionally, in India, we were an offline channel, offline driven, company, not company, sorry, offline driven country. The categories was bought offline. There was a lot of there's a lot of touch and feel that's involved when you're buying it offline, right? And especially with beauty care, and color cosmetic in specific, right? It was assumed that that is one of the important factors while a consumer makes a purchase, which still is. But then what we have seen is consumers have also gone ahead and made has shifted to purchasing it online, right? And that, given how the online channels and platforms have evolved, and there's both the horizontal platforms that have built these categories, and then there are specific vertical platforms, and Nykaa is a classic example here, in the Indian context, where specific to beauty care, they built that vertical platform where consumers have now gone in and bought and had started making those purchases online. So one, in terms of, and this I believe, at least personally, that this shift would continue, where with more and more technology coming in play, consumers being able to experience how that product would look like on them would enable them to keep purchasing online, because there's a certain convenience of purchasing online, right? And there is a lot of technology which is virtual try-ons that's come up, and there's a lot more that can that would evolve over the periods of time. So I think that's one shift in terms of the purchasing behaviors of a consumer within this industry, which I think would continue. It's already there. We are in middle of that transition, but I think it would continue to happen. I'm not saying that offline channels won't grow or won't play a part, but I think online, with a lot of these interventions, would continue to grow disproportionately. The second trend that I see is there's a lot of one, beauty as a category has a lot of scope in India, right? Because clearly, with Indian women having a lot more buying power as we grow, right? This category is bound to grow. Within that category, I think two things that would happen very specifically. One is the personalization piece, right? That's going to evolve. And what I mean by personalization, so there's innovation that's going to play a part, there's technology that's going to play a part, but the ability for smaller, nimble, faster companies to build products specific for smaller cohorts where there are certain demands, etc., would continue to happen, right? Earlier, long a couple of years back, companies used to have very standard products and assume there's a large market of consumers that would consume that. But slowly, with a lot of D2C brands also coming up, but I think with a lot of innovation that has also happened, which has made this possible, where personalization for the consumers to consume a product or to make those purchases, right? So that's one shift which I feel would continue further, apart from the whole channel shift. The other piece is in terms of innovation. So what we see, at least within the beauty category, the consumers are becoming a lot more educated, right? And there are very different ways of consuming a beauty product, right? So there's this entire we call it dermatology based products or whatever, right? Scientific based products, which as a category is growing very, very heavily in India, right? And we expect that it would continue to grow disproportionately in the coming years as well. And Honasa, for example, plays in that part of in the business through one of its brands, which is the Dermaco. And then there is, on the other hand, there are also other requirements, which is very as in safe products, so and so forth. So a lot of specific demands of these consumers. Somebody wants a scientific based product, somebody wants a safe product, somebody wants something else, etc. Each of these would grow, as in each of these would have certain demands that would keep growing over the years. But some of these pieces which were not as sizable in the past, as in the expectation is that they're going to grow disproportionately going forward, and which is what we have seen a lot of. So K Beauty, for example, is one such example, right? Growing very, very fast. Then there is this entire dermatology based brands, or based products, which are growing very, very fast. So in different pockets, we'll see very disproportionate amount of growth coming in, led clearly by how the consumer demand evolves.
So I think I'll just pick that up from where Avinash left. I think the first point, I think I'm completely on board. I'll just add to that layer. wherein I think digital continues to kind of grow disproportionately, and 100% on board on that. Just a layer on that, I think probably is the fact that the way today, I think the way the consumers have started consuming content is something which we have to be in line, and we have to be in trend with that, because content is king. Even if I talk about Honasa for that matter, I think the way probably they sold a hair oil, it was not something which was new to the market, but the way it was positioned was new to the consumer, right? We all were using hair fall shampoos and hair fall oils, but somehow when Honasa put that in same information out, and packaged it, in their content, it seemed very new, it seemed very fresh, it seemed very believable. So I think content is king, right? If I talk about again Swiss Beauty, there's nothing more generic than selling a lipstick. Believe you me on that. And we sell one lipstick every 3.52 seconds. So I mean, just given that sheer volume, I think it's very important that, how can I make that lipstick, a lot more, as a content piece, a lot, there's some newness needs to come, right? So I think that is something very, very important. And taking away from that, I think the second trend, which I think it's already warmed up, and it's going to only get more aggressive, is video commerce. So I feel, while digital is something which is great and it's big, but digital commerce is very, very heavy. I think there have been times and moments wherein we have been sold out in like 48 hours of certain creators going live. And again, like I said, being an import brand where we are manufacturing, products globally, naturally when we are ordering in shipments in containers, right? I mean, I should understand that, because otherwise this the unit economics don't make sense. And still going out of stock, is it's massive, right? I mean, a lipstick, I think, Ajay, you know that, 100,000 lipsticks in 60 days. I mean, it was just something, it was bizarre. Like, we didn't know what to do with it. So I think, and that was not because lipstick is new, and it's not because, oh my God, I gave the maximum innovation on the product. Yes, it was. But I think content was king, and the video commerce was a big unlock, right? And as I heard somebody the other day mention this, that how likely is Amazon to become Instagram? And the answer is 1 on 10. And how likely is Instagram to become Amazon? It's probably 9 on 10.
Wow.
So I think that's something which I kind of keep very, very close to my mind and heart every time we are looking at a product or a project, right? So that is, I think, one piece. Second, time and again, I think biggest brands, I mean, even if you look at L'Oreal for that matter, I mean, we just go back and say product, 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 product. I mean, till you're not coming out to the consumer with some innovation, and you're not in line with global trends, you could be having the best video commerce, you could be having the best content, but if you don't have the right product
Right.
fit, I think you're gone. And honestly, I'm not one of those fancy jargons where you say that market fit hona zaruri hai. I don't think so, right? I mean, again, recently, January, we know the most viral product was holographic. It was an outbreak on, Google. It was the largest search term, Swiss Beauty holographic eyeliner. I mean, I sell lipsticks for, 300 rupees. I sell liners for 250. We decided to make a liner for 450. It was holographic. Nobody else in India had it. 60,000, 70,000 units in 7 days. It went out of stock. So again, I think product, and there was not too much maths done. Market fit kya hoga, kaise becenge, I mean, it's just, that's all. I think that's all step two. When you know that the product is trendy enough, it's something what global markets are doing. Why can't I bring it to my Indian consumer at a price point which is accessible? So I think that's the second one. And third, I know a very abused term, and I've been talking about it a lot over the last few summits. Ajay, we bumped into
Yeah.
each other also on the retail summit on that one. Very large offline business for us. Again, it's a very, very large offline business, 25,000 retail touch points, over 200 modern trade outlets. So I think we are seeing that consumer who's either getting recruited offline and is shopping online, or is getting recruited online and is then repeating offline. And I think that time has changed, where you saw different product sets across different channels. I still see different product sets across different geographies, but not necessarily across the channel. Right? I mean, what an Amazon and an ICA sells is not different to what my general trade market sells, right? And it's
Right.
definitely not different to what a New You sells, and it's not
Right.
different to what my D2C sells either. Right? My shades will will vary depending north and south, but somehow at a channel level, I'm not seeing that. And I'm talking 1,500 SKUs.
Right.
Right? Single brand 1,500 SKUs. So it's very clear that the consumer is definitely omni-channel. And D2C, where it's not my largest, my .com is not my largest part of the business. But being such a widely distributed brand, right? I've always asked this question to the team: why is this consumer coming on .com? Why do I have over 150,000 organic searches on Google? Why are they? I mean, it's not like I'm not available in retail touchpoints, right? 30,
Right.
25,000 retail touchpoints. You go to a smallest market, you'll find me. Right?
Right.
You go to a mall, you'll find me. So why are you going to come? And Nykaa, we are the top search, Amazon top search. So why
Right.
are you coming on .com? It is the experience, it's the trust, right? And it is that same consumer who knows us offline and is just looking for that extra experience, that extra GWP, that extra piece of information they might find at my site, which they will not find at the shop owner may not give them. So I think that's the only reason I would see why my consumer is coming to me on other .com business. So I think we just need to be very cognizant of, what's the experience you are giving on .com.
So, one important thing that I would like to sort of add to this conversation, right? I mean, I was at a major marketplace's office about a week ago in Bangalore, and I was just talking to their category head, right, about about the overall online piece and how the consumer base is growing. So, what he had told me was basically the overall number of consumers which are sort of shopping online for both Amazon and for Flipkart. He said for Amazon that number was actually degrowing, the number of consumers, right? Similarly, for Flipkart, it was growing a little bit, right? So the worry there is, I'm saying that, look, if the overall set of consumers is sort of fixed or degrowing now, right? How will that sort of bode out for the channel? And I think what was coming out interesting was that basically in your verticals like your Myntra, your Nykaa, right? The growth is largely coming off from those particular verticals adopting new categories, right? So I think category expansion is what is going to be critical for growth, because if the consumer base is similar and overall the same consumer is buying offline and online, and the online piece is a very, very small portion of the overall set, you know, how do we see that piece growing? And an important corollary which came out from there was even today in offline, right? If you go to let's say a Noble Chemist, or you go to any offline store, what percentage of the brand's entire portfolio is available there? Because what I was being told was that distributors and all of these guys are only buying the fast selling products or the top selling products. But the brand's entire portfolio, maybe 200, 300, or in your case, 1,500 SKUs, how much of that is actually available to someone in a tier two or a tier three city offline? So maybe if you can also shine a little bit of light about that in terms of your SKU spread and what is that available in the offline world versus the online world in a tier one, tier two city, that might also sort of be an interesting anecdote here.
Question to me? Sorry,
To
I thought.
both of you, right?
Acha. Okay, so we'll.
I think I have a very small piece on this, and probably then Avinash can pick this up. I think in our space, because it is color cosmetics, Ajay. It's slightly different,
Mm,
right? I mean, I think I believe probably slightly more different for Avinash, because I mean, if it's a salicylic acid, you essentially don't have as many variants, and a person in a smaller shop or a bigger shop, I mean, they both can have acne. And a person in Bangalore can also have acne, and in Delhi can also have acne. So I think
right.
that would probably be different for every category. I think in our space, the consumer is going to buy a blusher, come what may. She's
Mm,
not stepping out without the kajal or the blush. That's not happening. So what changes for me is only my shades, right? And that is the only thing that probably changes. What we also do very interestingly, I mean, or if you might want to call it a secret sauce, which is not so, which is not so a secret anymore. But I think it's a best practice. You have to, despite having the largest category, right, and having 1,500 SKUs or not, that is just a matter of choice. I mean, let's be very honest. I don't think even a KPI for any business owner, from for me sitting out on the floor, is to sell all 1,500 SKUs. We all, when we look at, we're also projecting and forecasting and buying accordingly, knowing these are my drivers, right? These are something which I want to build. I am innovating, and then these are which are my just which is going to complete the gap. Why should I even give one brow pencil out to my competition? So even if I have to buy, I have a brow pencil for 99 rupees and I have a eyeshadow palette for 1,899 rupees. The idea is I don't want the consumer to go out without anything. So I think some are very consciously, we know that these are to just complete the category, or they are portfolio completers, but they're not essentially, the biggest product for me. So I think as business owners, we are very cognizant of that, a makeup remover wipe is not my best seller, but it does not interfere in selling lipsticks and foundations and concealers and highlighters. I'll continue doing that. So I think that is one bit, at least for our side of the business. My shades change. Product penetration pretty much across online, offline are kind of defined, saying, boss, these are the top sellers, and this needs to penetrate come what may. So I think that is a very, very hard KPI for us, is penetration. Second, I think the split between online, offline, again, I think within online, the only split where I'm possibly seeing now, because a lot of horizontal players are also aping what vertical players are doing. Today, even an Amazon wants to do Amazon Beauty, right? I mean, they were not like that before. It was just Amazon. Today, Amazon Beauty has a separate logo. They have a separate day. They have separate budgets, finally. So I would see an Amazon Beauty, Nykaa also. I mean, yeah, they're in the same line. Nykaa has a more larger share of voice, but Amazon also sells beauty. There, where I differentiate is between quick commerce and rest, because that is where the differential is, right? Um, I I don't essentially need to put 1,500 SKUs on quick commerce. A Zepto and a Blinkit doesn't need it, right? So I think that's where the differential comes in, which is again conscious call, saying quick commerce doesn't need as many products. And if I talk about offline, again, this only two places where I would split is my general trade shop, because in the paucity of space, you understand it's only a counter. So you only get this counter, you get that one shelf at the back and a drawer inside. That's all I get. And there is a basket which has nail polish. That's how India works, right? So I think there what I have versus what I would have at my store slash modern trade, that is obviously differentiated because it's a business ask. I will need a 200 rupee, 300 rupee product in a general trade shop which can just move like this. Sindoor chahiye, compact chahiye, foundation chahiye, lipstick chahiye, over. Right? As soon as I want to go to a more evolved audience who wants a highlighter, wants a palette, wants a brow, wants all of that, is when I move to my modern trade. And obviously, I need higher average selling prices there for, again, the sake of unit economics. So I think that's again the two differential which happens there. So I think that is how, at least for us, is how we kind of, plan our expansion or our catalog product mix across segments. We're getting into airports now. That will have a different set.
Correct.
Like an airport does not need certain products. So I mean, that's now probably the fourth wing we will explore on how to do differently. But right now it is just this pretty much.
Avinash, what about you? How do you manage your
Well,
SKU?
so absolutely, what Sahil mentioned, just building on top. One, clearly in offline space, the space is limited, right? And while we play both on color cosmetic kind of categories, non-color cosmetic categories as well, we realize that, and between different channels as well, right? So modern trade, general trade, there's always you can't have infinite catalog from those spaces. And for that, then you'll have to make mindful choices of, what are the kind of products that you would want to be placed out of these channels. Within that as well, you might, so for example, we have a differentiated strategy for the type of stores that we go in from, right? A store which has a very high throughput can have a slightly wider catalog versus a store which has a very limited throughput, right? It's in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town. You don't need to have the entire catalog there, right? Because then you're not there's obviously the catalog blocks space, working capital, etc. So that's a certain limitation that we work with, and which is how we differentiate at least the kind of catalog that has to go in through these spaces. uh, and then it's again a function of kind of categories that we play in, right? So for example, for a color cosmetic category, we would want to have the entire catalog there, right? When a consumer walks in and is experiencing color cosmetic, they'll want different shades to choose from, different products to choose from, etc. A non-color cosmetic category could be played a little differently. That said, those restrictions aren't there when it comes to the online channel. And within that online channel, then depending on what the brand feels like. So today, for example, one of the things that Honasa has felt very, very strongly about is if there is a consumer demand about a certain product, and if us playing in a certain channel, which is an online channel, enables us to meet that demand, even if it is a small demand, we should have a product there, right? And because we are not limited by the constraints of an offline space that's available, we can make it available online. So that way, and which is why we play with fairly wide, a well spread catalog when we are catering to our consumers through our brands like Mamaearth, where, right, very different categories that we play on. And the whole intent is, if there is a demand, why shouldn't we be there and meet that demand? So with that intent, what online channels have enabled us is to then have a much larger catalog made available for the consumer. So even if a consumer is a tier 2 or a tier 3 consumer who might not be able to get that product in their offline store, but would still be able to buy it online, right, through different channels, be it our .com website or through a horizontal or a vertical marketplace. So that's broadly the approach that we have had, and that's how we also look at our catalog. So it's I think one of the key things, and traditional companies would typically look at and say, cut your long tails, work with limited catalog, the ones that are scalable works best, etc. Versus what we have had approach is, how do we manage our long tails better? Because a long tails are part of our business strategy, our plans, right? So that's how our approach in terms of the catalog management's been.
No, I think that's a very, very valid point from both of you, right? Because today, for some of the larger brands who are selling online, but they're like, be it your L'Oreal or any of these top brands, most of them are not selling directly. They're selling it to a RK World or to someone like that, right? So the same distributor mindset sort of carries there, right? Saying that only stock those products which will sell. So the ability to really, expose that long tail is where there's a challenge for the larger brands, and that's where we see an opportunity. Even for us at Emiza now, we've sort of now started, like I said, a couple of large brands. We've onboarded them as a seller ourselves, right? And what we're focusing on is actually exposing that long tail, right? Which is actually so critical in being able to get a lot of consumer insights, being able to sort of understand beyond just your top sellers, right? In terms of what India wants, where could the next hero product come from, right? So I think that's a big distinction between sort of the institutional players versus the D2C brands, right? So I think that's good. Now, the next thing I want to touch upon is the whole manufacturing piece, right? Now, the whole Make in India piece is really growing. It's gaining a lot of momentum, right? So how is that playing out in your specific businesses? How are you all thinking about Make in India, import versus buy? Where is India today in its manufacturing journey for your particular categories? Where do you see the gaps and the white spaces over there?
Yeah, maybe I'll go first. It's pretty straightforward and standard for us. Almost most of our catalog is Make in India, right? And in our case, we work with the third-party manufacturers who manufactures the product for us. And while there could be certain components that could come in, from outside, but largely the production's all in India. And I think in the last, again, over the last 10 years, the way the capabilities have been developed within India, especially in the beauty care category, of being able to produce very specific, high quality products, that's evolved, tremendously. And I'm not saying that products which are produced in India versus produced outside, what's the difference, etc. But that said, the capability wise, India has evolved a lot in terms of being able to, the manufacturers in India have evolved a lot in terms of being able to manufacture the right quality products to meet the demands that's out there. And for us, so it's been fairly straightforward because we are able to get whatever we need. Especially, that can be whatever we need is we are able to find it in India in terms of the partners being able to manufacture it. So it's been a simple approach so far, but depends, if as our categories, as we evolve on different categories, if there is a specific requirement, maybe you'll have to see, if we have the right capability here in India, etc. or not. But so far, I don't think we have seen any challenge on that front.
Just one add-on question. I mean, as India is trying to become a manufacturing hub, right? I think privacy laws, secrecy, all of those are very, very critical. So, do you see any challenges in the India landscape in terms of, how do you keep your formulation safe? How does your secret sauce remain secret, right? Do you have any sort of worries around that from an India point of view?
So, not very necessarily, right? So when you look at different as different companies take very different approaches, right? They can a lot of companies do take an approach where they safeguard their formulations through certain sets of IP rules or whatever. And while in India, I think that's a space that's an area that could evolve, like it is with let's say with data privacy laws, right? We know that it's critical. There are countries which are better than us, but in India also, with what the government's been able to do and intervene, some of these things have been adopted really, really fast. Similarly, in these areas, I see the adoption of certain rule sets which works in favor of the brands, etc., would be pretty quick. So I don't see that as a major challenge at this point in time, where the privacy or the data secrecy when it comes to formulations, etc., could hamper the specific companies, brands,
Oh,
etc.
that's great to hear. That's really great to hear. Sahil, what about you guys at SwissBD?
Oh, just I'm gonna have a very different point of view on this one. So,
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
no, I'm just, I mean, obviously, I understand where, Avinash is coming from, because honestly, I mean, while personal care and, a lot of skincare, I feel is massively evolved in India. And I personally also believe that, having being a part of a lot of, founding teams of a lot of previous brands I've been on board with. Um, but I think makeup still has a journey it has to do, to be very honest. And being a brand just 100% makeup, right? I mean, we don't essentially sell any other category but high performance makeup. So I think for us, it was 100% 100% import brand, which did, honestly, to be very, very honest, in the last year we have seen capabilities coming to India, even if they are foreign partners, who have made their, way into India through, other through some JVs and stuff, right? I mean, and Avinash would, obviously know all of them, and they all formulators who are, from Italy, and the formulators from, globally all over the world now, but they all are realize that they want a space in India, they want a partner in India, and they want to kind of, operate from here. And they all are, and they're doing, I think they are still doing a better job than the rest. But for us today, from that 100%, we became 97, then we became 95, we became 92. Currently, we are about 90, 91%. By next month, we'll be about 86, 87. But obviously, it's not still even a 50-50 portfolio for us. I think primarily it's just because I think the a makeup and high performance makeup, it's about two things, right? One is about the richness of the pigment. So I think that is just something which eventually anyways ends up getting imported. And second is technology, and this is not something which is an India problem, right? It's not essentially a problem also. It is just there are not enough people doing it, and the ones who are kind of doing it, then there is a monopoly. Wherein if I talk about, say, Germany, or I talk about Taiwan, or I talk about China or Hong Kong, there's just so many, and there is just so much expertise out there that they're probably slightly ahead on the curve. something like, for example, eye pencils, right? I mean, we all know the smallest to biggest brands need to look out for eye pencils, because just the machinery they have outside. Every time there is a nib on that pencil. Every time it passes through the machine, right? They photograph it to know the precision of the pencil that you're using. And if in the photograph it is not as per the point one it trashes itself there only and goes into the bin. That's not how it happens in India. It's not an India problem. It's the technology issue. We don't have that technology currently. So I think we will get there. Like Avinash said, it's something which is evolving as a process. So naturally, all pencils get imported for us, and Germany is the best. And it's like I said, it's not about India. Even China is not able to get it right to that precision. So that's I think something. Even L'Oreal for the longest time, mascaras, they were it gets imported because you're not able to crack that mascara here. So I think those are some of the category nuances which we are still grappling with. Having said that, we have a trademark on a product which is called the lipstick of India. Because it was 100% manufactured product for us, and that's when I was talking to you about, where we sold 100,000 pieces. So while at one spectrum it is this, there is also this massive but it took us over a year to formulate that product, get it right, and then obviously it was loved by everybody. So I think we kind of trying to balance the pyramid on that. So I think it's something we're still evolving with.
No, great, because I
I
think,
completely agree with Sahil on the whole color cosmetic piece.
Yeah.
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 I see that as an opportunity, right? I mean, if people can import the machines and set up manufacturing here, it's at least what,
Yeah, and they are doing it.
$10
Like
opportunity.
I'm saying, they are brands. They are large ones. You meet at Cosmoprof. I mean, next week we are back in Europe. Meeting them, and they all are finding inroads to India. Ki kaise set up kare. They are setting it up in India, or they want to set it up in China. And naturally, just the general sentiment, they are very keen on India, right? So I think I won't be surprised over the next 2 years if I see this massively ramping up.
Right. Good. So I think we have one last point before we sort of open up for questions, and I kind of want to talk about the whole supply chain as a differentiator, right? So whilst we talk about how important the product is, maybe first, Avinash, if you could talk a little bit about one or two supply chain strategies that you all have employed, which have sort of become a differentiator for you, right? For NASA.
Fair. So, before I talk about these strategies, I think supply chain, so when a consumer makes a purchase, right, there are broadly, if I look at it from a supply chain lens, there are three steps, right, where a brand convinces a consumer to buy their product. So that's where, entire marketing, sales, etc. comes in play, right? In the end is the experience that a consumer gets by using that product, right? Which is where the quality of the product itself comes in, right? Very, very critical. In between, I think somewhere lies the supply chain piece, where the experience of buying that product, right, of making that purchase, and which is where exactly the rubber hits the road, where how is that experience been, right? So if a consumer needs a product, is he getting that in that time from that place or not, right? And the whole intent of building a supply chain in a certain way is to make sure that this experience is not compromised, right? And there are typically we look at so when we look at it from a consumer facing lens, there are only three things that we look at, right, and that we try and improve. One is the availability of a product, right? Whichever channel that we sell from, are we available on that channel that the consumer is purchasing from? Second, if a consumer needs a product in a certain time, especially, and this is in the context of the online channels, are we able to deliver that product in that time, right? So today, when a consumer is trying to purchase a product online, let's say, and if he sees that one of our products is going to take 6 days to come in, and there's a competitor product that's going to come in a day, it would influence his buying behavior, right? So are we able to make sure that we are able to provide that product in the time that is required by the consumer? And the third is what's the freshness? So quality can be actually divided into two parts, right? The exact quality of when a consumer makes that uses that product, and second is the freshness of a product, because in supply chain that's one piece that we can try and influence, right? So those are the three consumer facing things that we typically look at, and the entire supply chain strategy is being built to enable these three matrices for the consumer, while also managing a complex catalog. The intent, again, so like I said, right, our approach is to have larger catalogs to meet consumer demands. Now, that catalog then cuts across our, so if you have a network which has multiple warehouses servicing multiple channels further, so the complexity is fairly large. The intent then is to optimize for that kind of a complexity within the network. So those are the two things that we try and do. And within this, I feel, this is where a supply chain can actually impact, the consumer purchase or the demand in a certain way, and which is what the differentiation that it brings in, right? Being able to service when the consumer needs a product in the time that it needs it, available, when the consumer is making a purchase, and the freshness of the product when he has made the purchase, and so that none of this compromises the experience while making that purchase.
And do you run a set of matrices or sort of KPIs where you actually track these sort of almost on a weekly or a month? What's the cadence around this?
So there are few things that we track almost on a daily level. For example, so like I said, right, the intent is those three top matrices which are consumer facing, but then underlying there are other matrices. But some of these things we are very, very specific about. So for example, for our online channels, we are very specific about what's the delivery time that a consumer sees when he is making a purchase. So are we able to deliver in the most optimum time or not? And for that, do we have the right placement of our inventory in our network, that as and when a consumer is making a purchase, he's getting it from our nearest warehouse within the network, and that we have converted to a matrix that we track daily, for example. Then there is something in terms of the availability of a product. So are our products available at that time when the consumer is making a purchase? So again, that is something that we track almost 3 or 4 times in a day through certain alerts, which tells us, because the availability of a product across our channels is something that we are very, very anal about. So that's another matrix that we track more frequently. And then there are certain matrices which again face standard supply chain matrices, which could be what's our cost of servicing a customer, are we efficient enough in terms of servicing it or not, so on and so forth. So that's something that we track on a slightly longer horizon. But there are a few things that we track daily and try and influence daily, just to make sure that the customer experience is are not hampered.
Sahil, your point of view?
Yeah. As you know, it is not my subject matter expertise, but there are just two things I want to add on this. Because when I see it from a lens of a business owner, I think a lot of people need to understand there is a difference between running operations and running supply chain, and I think a lot of brands mix the two up. Running operations is different. Running a supply chain is very different, because supply chain has a very big word which we tend to forget, and the word is chain. Right? I mean, it is exactly like how a relay race is. But fortunately, unfortunately, a lot of brands, a lot of teams, a lot of people view it and expect it to run like a 100-meter sprint. It is not, right? And I say this to other co-founders, and I say this to anyone who looks at supply chain, that boss, you can't look at it as aaj problem hai, abhi aag bujhate hai, let's run it as a 100-meter dash. You kind of we solve for now, wherein that's what operations can still do. But what supply chain does is it is a relay race. The person runs, they give to the next person, and that moves forward. So um, I don't have the technical knowledge that Avinash has, and how he put it across, but I can tell you from a sentiment perspective, that's how I see this, and I think it's very important to differentiate operations to supply chain, with chain being the keyword there. And the second part, which again, like I say, because I only look at it at a macro level, is to identify there is a problem. I think this is again one of those verticals wherein one is so busy justifying everything is right and dhanda ho to raha hai, right? Is that one doesn't understand that supply chain is probably, if you give a little bit more time, and this is, as a board member, I can tell you, I'll give 100% of my time to my sales team, my marketing team, even down to my design team. But when supply chain needs some time and they're like, nahi tum dekh lo, ho jayega, kar lenge, right? I think they need that equal amount of time today. in the day, because you might go and see a larger metric and say 90% का fill rate है, lead time ठीक है, so everything is okay. So I think we tend to forget that, listen, you need to kind of get a little bit more finer about supply chain. It's not like sales ki 100% target ho gaya, so everything is fine. Something is burning, you won't even know till it's up in fumes, because that the loss of opportunity is tremendous. And I have been through that pain to know and understand that, listen, if my sales targets were 100% with a 90% fill rate, right? It is because for the last 6 months, the metrics it has never come back saying that this particular product, this particular shade was never in stock for 6 months. But the time it was in stock, my sales suddenly went up and there was 106% achievement. But nobody is linking the extra 6% to supply chain. They're like, oh, yeah, sales did a brilliant job is bari. Are because 6 months baad stock aaya, bewkoof. It is not you. Supply chain gave you the damn product. So I just feel like a larger metric, we should just look at, हम वो देखते हैं lead time ठीक है, fill rate ठीक है, तो सब कुछ ठीक है. But I think supply chain again is so core, and Emiza as warehouse partners, and as the last mile, it's very critical to know supply chain is opportunity. So even when your business is 100%, it can be 105, believe you me, if your supply chain is in place, right? With the same amount of sales force on field, you can deliver 105% business. That's my limited understanding on this subject matter.
Very well said. I think Avinash will appreciate that, right? The unsung heroes.
Sorry, missed you.
I said, I think you'll appreciate that. I think supply chain is the unsung hero, right? So,
absolutely.
When everything goes right, nobody says anything. When everything goes wrong, तो supply chain के ऊपर फट जाओ, बस वही है.
This would be music to any supply chain professional here. Professionals here.
So I think with this, I'd like to open up to any questions. A couple of questions have been emailed, have been WhatsApp to me. But if the audience has any questions, I'd like to take that first before I go to the questions that were sent to me. Okay, so I'll go to the two questions that were shared. So one is
we have Mahesh Manmali who's asked a question.
Okay.
It says, as a part of the beauty and personal care industry, how do you ensure and maintain trust with end user customers when many new brands rely on third-party manufacturers for production, resulting in a different entity details appearing on a product label? Given your commitment to quality, especially as a consumer yourself, how do you navigate this challenge to reassure customers that quality is not compromised? I think that's a great question, Mahesh, and I think I'll answer this from a more consumer perspective. Avinash, if you want to pick it up. But I think this is not, to be very honest and being very candid, it's not just for, say, a Honasa or for a Swiss Beauty. It would be for probably 70% of the brands out there. You will see manufacturing details to be very different to marketed by details, and that's purely because the understanding of us as organization and brands is, we understand the product, we understand you. I mean, we understand the consumer. We may not have the technical capability of manufacturing it, but that nowhere implies that we do not understand or we do not have a research and a product development team sitting in house, right? I mean, I personally know NASA has a very large new product development team, and I have a very large new product development team, which is sampling every product. It is going through every formulation, and obviously we are the manufacturers we are working with are, I mean, globally certified EcoCert manufacturers. So we are not, essentially reaching out to manufacturers or working with anyone who's not time tested. And I'm using the word time tested is because they've been around for the last 30 years. Right. So like I gave you the example of the pencil manufacturer. That's the manufacturer the globally is being used and is being using it for the last not 20 years, not 30 years. They've been in the business of making kajal pencils for 100 years. So I mean, I think it's important to understand that, when these reputed brands, and we are also doing clinical studies. So again, brands like Honasa, brands like myself, we always put the studies out, and the study is put out for that to double click for you and to say that, listen, we've got your back, and if anything goes wrong on the product, you will boycott the brand, you will never boycott the manufacturer. So I think it is more important for us to kind of do that.
Absolutely. And just, on top of what Sahil mentioned, what brands also do, and, as well, we as well do that, we have a lot more stringent quality checks in place as in when these product comes into our warehouses and systems, because again, right, we have to ensure that the quality, that goes on to the consumers is absolutely utmost there. So there are more than two levels of checks that happens, and there are third parties that are involved in terms of doing those quality checks apart from us doing it ourselves. So uh, uh, there are more and more systems and processes in place to ensure that the quality that subsequently moves on to the consumers are absolutely there and not compromised.
We have one more question from Hiral Saria. One is, what is the biggest pain point after speed and TAT that you face when it comes to D2C last mile logistics?
So I won't say speed and TAT is a pain point, right? It's in fact, there is an expectation. So when a consumer is making a purchase, right, there's an expectation of how quickly do they want to get that product, and now there are different ways in us being able to service that product fast, right? So if you think we can't service in 10 minutes, we go through a QC route, right, a quick commerce route, and for example, we are available through quick commerce platforms where when a consumer can make a purchase. So I don't see any of these as a pain point, but I think last mile logistics is one of the most important pieces uh, when it comes to within that supply chain link, right? When it comes to ensuring a certain consumer experience, right? A consumer experience starts when he's making a purchase to, when he gets the product, and then, before he uses it. So in that leg, the last mile piece, plays an important part, and ensuring that we have either the right partners who can service us in a certain way, or we have the right ways and means of meeting the demand in a certain way, right? So either through different channels or through having the right technology which picks up the partner more dynamically, where it matches demand and supply, that ensures that the speed or TAT is not compromised, so on and so forth. So it's not a pain point, but again, and a very important point in the consumer journey of purchasing and getting that product.
Interestingly, Hiral has also topped up that by saying, when it comes to 3PL partnerships, do you think that last mile services have become largely commoditized? What differentiates one partner from another?
So it's fairly, it's standard. There is cost and there is service. But I wouldn't say that it's fully commoditized, because there are still certain areas where partners can build capabilities which, let's say, the rest of the pool might not have, right? So there's something called, so there are certain partners which are experts in optimizing for cost and delivering in a certain TAT. There are certain partners which would optimize for the TAT by saying, we can do within X hours delivery, or the same day delivery, if the orders are placed, etc. So there are space for each of these partners to have certain capabilities, and depending on what the brand feels like, what works for them, and the consumer needs in that case. So if a consumer values a quick delivery and is ready to either pay for the purchase or enables that service enables a certain buying behavior, the brand enables it, right? So the space is not fully commoditized, but clearly there are limited differentiations that the partners can do, but the two rules of differentiation is cost and service.
I think in my experience also, I've seen that certain partners seem to have strengths in certain regions, right? Not everybody's equally strong in every part of the country. So I think breaking it up regionally is also something which one can look at. Same day versus next day kind of a service. So some people are extremely strong on same day. So I think ultimately the inherent capabilities actually lead to the differentiation, right? Because certain people are able to do certain things which others aren't. So great. I think one last question here is around, any of the panelists can answer this. Indian skin types need products to be tailor-made for our needs. Do you think that D2C brands in India or in this space are investing enough on innovation? Will we see a brand like L'Oreal coming from India anytime?
I think before that, there's even Rohit who's asking, what role does social media play in shaping beauty trends and influencing consumer choices in India? I think I'd mentioned that and it inferred upon it, saying I think that is pretty much the space which is I would not say has been vacant. I think it's a space which is very very large. I think from an influence perspective, I think you yourself as are consuming so much content. Every single day. I mean, when you have 5 minutes spare, you are in a traffic, you are in metro, you are just in the middle of two calls, you just pick up your phone and this is what we end up doing. And that is just forming reels. I mean, we have today TikTok stars and Instagram stars, coming as main leads in movies. I think that itself is a clear representation
Correct.
of how powerful social media is today. It has made its way all through Bollywood. And I mean, not to name, but yet to name, Ori is one such
Correct.
classic
I was
example
thinking of that
to
exactly.
say the kind of social wave it has been there. So we all had FOMO of Jamnagar last weekend, and it was only and only because of social media. So I think maybe one wedding happening at a Jamnagar or maybe a product. I think it's just making the world a lot closer and influencing purchases massively today. I'm seeing brands on Shark Tank India today. They were on Instagram like 2 years ago, selling only on Instagram, and they used to, send the QR links on DM. Today, I'm seeing them on, Shark Tank, and it's amazing, to see that journey.
Correct.
So I think it's huge. And as far as the innovation part is concerned, I think on that only my 2 cents is. I think given we might be manufacturing in whichever part of the world, but I think we are selling to Indians. And at the very core of it is to understand the Indian skin and to understand the Indian skin tones. And I think brands like L'Oreal also, I won't even benchmark that for the simple reason that they have in fact done a lot of effort in trying to go out today and say made for Indian skin tones, because they in fact had to shout louder to say, I understand you, boss, I understand your skin, right?
Correct.
And maybe a McDonald's who came to India, maybe Mercedes when they came to India, or Starbucks, everyone has a very India-led strategy. So being Indian brands ourselves and being Indian promoters, maybe an Huasa or maybe a Swiss Beauty, I mean, I think the basic core of the DNA is that will my Indian consumer understand it? And then it further goes down into from a tier one all the way to a tier three. Will they understand the product and do they need the product? You
Hmm.
know, so I think at least for me, it's a non-negotiable. It is something which we are more at the core at, even versus even your biggest, international houses, if I may please, on that.
So make for India.
Absolutely, absolutely. Same point of view.
Great. Okay, so I think we're out of time now. So I want to thank both Avinash and Sahil. Thank you so much for your time, your insights. It was really, really
Thank
valued, and also want to thank the audience for taking the time out to sort of dial in and listen. So yeah, thank you guys.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ajay. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sahil.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Likewise, Avinash. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.